When you're new, undercutting is probably pretty imperative. And then as you build reviews, obviously, after about 50 reviews or a year, there's usually about the same amount of time, give or take. That's when you can stop doing that. And you can basically put yourself on the map as an established host and say, man, my house is better than the guy next door. If you want to have a great experience, look at my reviews. This is where it's at. And basically at that point, you're just tweaking based on supply and demand.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owners Association, where real estate investors have found success since 1968. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group. This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 408. If you're struggling with your short-term rental property and wondering how you can get more guests, better reviews, more cash, and become a better property manager, you'll definitely benefit from today's conversation. Luke Carl has been managing vacation homes since 2015 with over 6,000 bookings. He's taught over 10,000 successful short-term rental property managers and has been through every short-term challenge you can imagine. Luke is a director of education for one of the biggest real estate teams in the nation called the Short Term Shop. Luke, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Wonderful intro, Brian, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here to talk short-term rentals. It's a very popular asset class. A lot of people are getting into it, but I think a lot of people have rushed into it in the past couple of years because of all the success short-term rental owners have had since COVID. And I think there's a sense that maybe too many people rushed in too soon. So what are you seeing on the ground, Luke?
I agree. It became very hot very quickly. When we first started doing this, we're early adopters, at least in the Airbnb space. Of course, you got to understand, Vrbo's been around for a million years, like 1999, basically since the invention of the internet. But Airbnb really didn't come around, at least as a household name, until the early 2010s, 2011, somewhere in that. As a matter of fact, it was a Super Bowl commercial in 2011 that really, in the grand scheme of things, you're only looking at about 10, maybe 15 years. But back then, when we first got involved, and I've been on Airbnb since the early days, since 2011, we were shouting it from the rooftops. This is real. You can actually make money. And Brian, I came from the long-term space. I definitely was more drawn to that in the early days of my career, just because it was traditional rental real estate and it made sense in my brain. And then my wife, she's been on your show, Avery Carl, of course. She's always been into the vacation thing. She loves to travel. She grew up in a motorhome, as a matter of fact. Her dad was a pro golfer. And so she grew up traveling, and it's always been in her blood. And so we just somehow found our way into this short-term space, and it was all just right time, right place. But back then, it was almost like we were shouting from the rooftops, hey, this is real. This is real. You can actually rent a house without having a lease. And people were looking at us like we were nuts. What are you talking about? These apps and these websites. And then all of a sudden, COVID made us normal. We were no longer the misfits of the rental real estate world. We were, maybe we're still the misfits, but we were all of a sudden thought of as a real asset class. And yeah, you're right. People did come out of the woodwork. And it has a lot to do with the fact that vacation homes are sexy. It's fun. You can put it on your Instagram and social media, and people will pay attention and maybe even comment or try and get you to let them stay there and that kind of thing. And that just doesn't really happen with long terms. At least in my experience, even my family doesn't even want to hear about my long terms.
What are you seeing on the ground right now? Have too many people rushed in? Is there a little distress or maybe a little too much inventory at the moment?
It depends. Again, market specific. We only play in vacation towns. And so in the towns where we operate, or where I own and operate and the shop operates, that's all there is. People don't really live in these areas. I do. I live in one of these towns, so I see it firsthand. I live in a little tiny vacation town of 8,000 people where millions of people come on vacation. So it is a little different where we are. The only way to have oversupply in the marketplace, really, in a town like where I live, is to build, because everything else is already a vacation rental. And there is a lot of building going on as well. That's happening. And we did see, I think we saw really, Brian, more of a shift away from property manager, third party, professional managers into the self-operator than anything in our markets. Now, I can't really speak from Cleveland or, a regular metropolitan market because I don't have any experience there on vacation, on short terms in those markets. But yes, I mean, if nothing else, the boom in our Facebook group alone will tell you that many more people have flocked to this than they were before.
Why don't we back up and you can tell our listeners, like, where are your markets? What does your portfolio of short-term rentals look like right now?
I personally I'm in the Smokies of Tennessee, East Tennessee. I've got 5 there, and I've got some in Panhandle of Florida, which is where I live. My Florida properties are a little spread out. Maybe they're probably about an hour to 2 hours apart, but they're all along the same stretch of beach, really. And that's it. I only have the 8 vacation homes, and I've got a multitude of long-term single family, and I also have apartments. At some point in time, we graduated into the commercial real estate, larger residential real estate and multifamily. But yeah, my vacation homes are actual vacation homes in drive-to markets where you don't have to get on an airplane. Places like I grew up in the Midwest, and when you're a kid and you don't have a ton of money, like my family, we would get in the car and drive to like Branson, Missouri, is a big drivable tourist destination. And again, Pigeon Forge, and actually Pigeon Forge, Gatlinburg, the East Tennessee Smokies, that's the number 1 Airbnb market in the world. And it's a low-hanging fruit, but man, it is exactly what we do. That market is built for what we do. So we stick to the drivable places you don't have to get on an airplane, but have very large tourist attributes like national parks and beaches.
And you mentioned that you're seeing a lot of people moving from the third-party management to self-managing themselves. What's your take on that? When you look at third-party professional management versus people doing it themselves, what's your perspective? Because it seems like both have their pros and cons.
Yeah, to me, it was a no-brainer. I grew up in that kind of you-do-it-yourself household. And I even, believe it or not, managed my long-terms when I first started. I couldn't afford a property manager, quite frankly, years ago. And so it was a smooth transition for me. It was actually a little bit easier in many ways for me to slide into the vacation homes because there's no lease, there's no evictions, there's no court, and there's no legal documents and 3 days notice and all that kind of stuff. Now, we're trading all that stuff for a review. I mean, there's obviously, it's not, we got to get rid of these. I love my long terms, absolutely. And in long terms, you don't have this review hanging over your head all the time, but you are giving up quite a bit of extra junk in the world of short term. And if you have a terrible guest, we call them guests, of course, instead of tenants, they're gone in 3 days. With long term, you're spending time on background checks and credit checks, and you're checking make sure they don't have too many paycheck advances going on and things like that. And in short term, we really we don't have any of that. You just go with your gut, quite frankly, and make sure you have systems in place. That's what I do. I have a message that goes out and says, if you plan on breaking any of these rules, you're going to be asked to leave this home, that kind of thing. Now, the good news is if they stink, they're generally gone in 2 or 3 days. Brian, I could be completely off topic at this point. I don't even remember what you asked me. Steer me back in the right direction.
Just what's your thought on third-party professional management?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So they definitely serve a purpose. They serve a purpose. There's a few reasons, but the main reason why it's so much more common in vacation homes to do it yourself, there's really 2 big reasons. Number one, the property management companies in vacation rental are going to charge, it's going to be about 20%. So if you can find a way to cut them out, you're already basically increasing your bottom line by 20%. So now that being said, do you want to sit there and say, okay, I found this cash flowing house. This house it's going to break even with a property manager, but if I do it myself, then I can get 20% of whatever your return happens to be, depending on your metric, of course. I don't know that I would look at it that way, but also, let me come back to that. But there's also the fact that Airbnb and Vrbo are doing all the dirty work for you for the most part. And most of the dirty work is the marketing dollars. They're spending millions and even billions of dollars. These are both around $10 billion a year companies. And they're spending a ton of money on making your life easier and putting your property on television and Super Bowl commercials and what have you. and becoming household names so that your property is easy to find. If your property is good, obviously you have to be good at working the platforms and making sure you're on the top of the page in everybody's line of sight.
Let's get into some specifics then, because you talk about working the platforms, making sure you're on the top of the site. Like, how do you do that? What are the tips for making that happen?
I'll be completely honest. It's not that hard. Everybody overthinks it. If you're paying attention and you're, actually doing what I consider my job, if you're doing your job, it's not all that difficult. Now, in the early days, it is more work because you don't have any reviews. Obviously, reviews are a big way to get, towards the top, especially on Vrbo. You got to learn the platforms. That's a big part of it. Call the platforms a lot and learn your craft. You're becoming a property manager at the end of the day. I think that's where people fail, Brian. And that's where you hear these sad stories where somebody didn't make it, ended up having to sell the house, and they complained about saturation, et cetera. They may have been a little in over their head, and I get that. It's not for everybody. Rental real estate in general is not for everybody. But I thought of it as learning literally a new craft, right? I wanted to know every teeny tiny nut and bolt, and I obsessed over it and got to the point where I was really good at my gig and made sure that my properties were full. So anyway, long story short, if you pay some attention, and really we're not talking a big time amount of time. It's not. Again, Airbnb and Vrbo are doing the heavy lifting, and Booking.com, et cetera, in a couple hours a week. Now, the first 30 to 45 days can be stressful. And I think you got to set a goal there, Brian. You got to say, hey, listen, after 45 days, I'm not going to be like stressing out about this thing anymore. So I need to get all my ducks in a row in the next month and a half, 2 months, so that I can go back to living my life. And most of the time, I'll be completely honest, they love it. It's fun. It's sexy.
What do you recommend people do to get their ducks in a row in that first 30 to 45 days to really get their property out there so it gains some traction?
Pictures, prices, and platforms. That's the top three. Most people are running around with terrible pictures. You have got to get professional photos. And I know that sounds like so elementary, but you would be surprised. And not only that, but there are so many people that go spend $400 or $500 on photos and they still stink because they just didn't know how to put that photographer in the right direction. They weren't thinking about it like a gig. They were just like, oh, step one, get good pictures, check the box. And then they put the pictures on and the pictures ended up stinking. You got to do some research.
What differentiates good professional photographs from bad ones?
There's a difference between real estate photos and vacation home photos. So now that being said, if you can get a good real estate photographer, in other words, somebody who makes listing photos for a seller, those are not necessarily going to translate to short term because there's amenities and things and lighting. And you're selling a different product. You're not selling the house. You're selling an experience. So number of photos. And again, that's very subjective. I've seen successful properties with 35 photos and I've seen successful properties with 150 photos. The biggest key there is that they were successful. And if the guy with 35 photos was not being successful, then you've got to do a little tweak. Maybe you add 40, 50 more pictures to that listing and give it a try. The biggest thing, Brian, that I can give you advice-wise is don't stay complacent. You have to keep moving and shaking until you finally get in a groove. And then eventually you can get to the point where it's just second nature.
The 3 Ps, you've got photos, pricing. Let's talk about pricing. How do you determine where your pricing should be?
Pricing's number one. That is the biggest part of the gig in vacation rental real estate. It is most important, and it probably should be the thing you're spending just about the most amount of time on. And it really can be done. It can be done if you've got 1 or 2 vacation homes. Let's say you're, just a regular, maybe you're a dentist and you wanted to have a home on the beach that you could subsidize a little income. And also there's great tax advantages in vacation rentals because of material participation. But anyways, you can get it to a few hours a week, but pricing needs to be the bulk. But the biggest problem there is you don't want it to be a race to the bottom. I could go on about this for about 2 hours, really. You don't want to, your pricing probably should be last in the chain of events that gets your property booked. There are a lot of other things you should work on first before you get to really the nuts and bolts and the tweaking and hopefully not lowering of the prices. In other words, if your pictures are great, your average nightly rate should be a little better. If you have great reviews, your average nightly rate's going to be better. Great amenities, great coffee situations, all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, the only difference between us and a hotel is a washer and dryer and a kitchen. So your kitchen and washer and dryer probably you want to have a really nice washer and dryer. That's going to make a huge difference in nightly rate. Believe it or not, you go out and spend $2,000 on a washer and dryer, and I'm telling you, that's going to come back huge in return on investment in a vacation home, because you can't get that in a hotel. And that's why people are coming to you. I got kids. My kids, we travel and they are covered in goldfish and whatever else. And the first thing I want to do is throw my clothes in the washer and dryer when I get to the vacation home.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com.
If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB and Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com. What other amenities drive pricing, help you keep your pricing up?
I'm not super huge into that. There's some guys out there that, like, man, they go nuts. We see a lot of putt, a lot of fire pits, things like that. I'm not that guy. For me, it's more just clean, cute, and comfortable, as Avery would say. Having a really clean, nice sheets for me is a big deal. To me, you don't have to go crazy. I do have one house that has a playground. It's the one we go to the most, and I have young kids. And I've got, like, pool tables are very common in one of my markets. Hot tubs are very common. You do need to have a hot tub if you're in the mountains. You don't have to have a hot tub if you're on the beach, because quite frankly, it's too hot outside anyway most of the time. Nobody wants to go from hot to hot. They want to go in the ocean. But it's a nice little upgrade if you've got a place, maybe say in like Panama City Beach or something. But I personally, I don't feel I need to go real crazy with my amenities and like interior design and things like that. I try to work my reviews and customer service, quite frankly, more than that stuff.
Going back to pricing, just how do you determine then where you should set your pricing? Are you looking at what everyone else is charging and then undercutting them, or do you go even above them?
All of the above. When you're new, you have to undercut because you don't have any reviews. And quite frankly, nobody has any reason to believe that you're not anything short of a scam. The best way to do a brand new vacation home is to put it in your listing. Just be honest and say, hey, we're brand new. We're offering a great price in exchange for building our review. You don't want to just straight up say, we need good reviews and that's why we're giving you a deal. But be classy about it and just be obvious. That's what's going on here. This is a new house. We're giving you a smoking deal. You're going to really like this house, and hopefully you'll reciprocate in the form of a great review. So yeah, when you're new, undercutting is probably pretty imperative. And then as you build reviews, obviously after about 50 reviews or a year, there's usually about the same amount of time, give or take. That's when you can stop doing that. And you can basically put yourself on the map as an established host and say, man, my house is better than the guy next door. If you want to have a great experience, look at my reviews. This is where it's at. And basically at that point, you're just tweaking based on supply and demand.
What's the third P? You had pictures, pricing. Is it platform?
Platforms. Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody, Luke, can you take a look at my listing? We've been doing this for a year and a half, and I'm not getting as many bookings as I used to. And it is so common for these folks to have abandoned Vrbo, especially Vrbo, which is a major player, and even Booking.com, which, yeah, you could probably be okay to get rid of Booking.com, quite frankly. In the US, other countries, you need it big time. But very common is because Vrbo is an older crowd and it's not as fast moving and easy to use. It is actually more of a mature landlord platform. Folks that have been doing this business for not noobs, they tend to gravitate a little more towards Vrbo. But when you're new, Airbnb sucks you in with all that fun, awesome stuff. And a lot of times people will just ditch Vrbo. And I see that very often where I'm like, hey, okay, I'm taking a look into your Airbnb, but I need to see your Vrbo too. Oh, we're not using it. We decided it wasn't worth our time. And I'm like, they're $11 billion a year revenue. You probably should stick your hand out in that platform and see if you can grab a couple of bucks.
What's the misconception there about Vrbo? Like, why do people think it's not worth their time?
So Airbnb has this, and I don't want to say anything negative about them. I absolutely love Airbnb. They've changed my life. Love them. A great company. But they do have this thing where they suck new people in. They energize your listing with new bookings, and they're very quick and fast moving and very a younger crowd. And so it's all marketing. They know what they're doing, and they target new hosts in order to suck them in.
Any other platforms that you recommend besides Airbnb, Booking.com, and Vrbo?
Those are the three big ones, obviously. And there are many others. In my opinion, probably not all that worth looking into. Off-platform has become very popular, creating your own website. And I do think that you need one, but it doesn't need to be the bulk of your business or of your time, because it can take quite a bit of time. If you're dealing with briansbeachcondo.com versus Vrbo.com, that's an uphill battle. So don't step over dollars to pick up pennies, but it is a good idea to have that website just in case. Maybe you could do some Facebook marketing with it, that kind of thing.
What other strategies are you using or other people using in today's market that are being successful?
That's why people gravitate towards short term. It's because it is very techy. We get a lot of engineers and things because there's so many bells and whistles and nuts and bolts to figure out. And there's new apps and websites and gadgets and gizmos every day. Personally, I kind of stick to the bread and butter. We call it a stack in short-term rental. And your stack it's comprised of all the different websites and apps that you use. And mine's actually pretty minimal, pretty simple. There are hundreds and hundreds, Brian, of vacation rental management softwares, many of which are geared towards the owner-operator. Literally, probably over 1,000 of these softwares now. When I first started, there were zero. They didn't exist. And things were more difficult back then. But now there's these hundreds of these just strictly for the management.
Yeah. What software are you using, Luke, for your management?
For my short-term management, I'm currently using Hospitable, which by most people's standards is, quite frankly, probably the easiest one out there. Again, I'm a simple guy. I don't want to complicate things. Hospitable for me, it's very sleek, easy to figure out, very centralized and very eye-pleasing dashboard. But there's OwnerRez would be the polar opposite of a Hospitable, where it has a million bells and whistles, but it's also extremely popular. It has very good financial reporting. If you're a spreadsheet type of a person, you're probably going to gravitate to an OwnerRez or maybe a Hospitable or maybe a Guesty Pro. All those that I just mentioned are very popular. Guesty actually has two softwares, one that's geared more towards the owner-operator with 3 or 4 properties called Guesty for Hosts. And then the list goes on for there. But again, I keep things simple. I'm a Hospitable guy. I've used many others, Your Porter, Guesty for Hosts. I used IGMS back in the day. I've used OwnerRez. But I've been with Hospitable for probably about 2 or 3 years. Price Labs, there's 3 pricing softwares in this space. There are 3 players in this space. There's Wheelhouse, Beyond Pricing, and Price Labs is by far the most popular, and they are actually a really good company. I'm a big fan of theirs.
Is that like a dynamic pricing software?
Absolutely. You basically just connect it to your property management software, or you can connect it directly to Vrbo and Airbnb if you would like, and skip the management software. And yeah, it has algorithms and basically does data scrapes and figures out what it thinks your property should be priced at. And again, we already mentioned that pricing of short term is, in my opinion, the most important part of the gig. And that takes the bulk of that pressure off of you. That being said, Brian, it is a completely different ballgame than when I started. You literally had to fill in 365 sales a year on your Airbnb, your Vrbo, your Booking.com dashboards by hand. And then eventually these management softwares came out and you could price all your properties, all your platforms from one software on multiple platforms. That was cool. Then these pricing softwares came out and you could tweak every night of the year with just a few clicks of a button. The biggest downside there, again, goes back to these folks that got into this and didn't quite realize what they were getting themselves into. You cannot just set a few numbers on a Price Labs or a Wheelhouse and forget it. And you probably shouldn't want to, quite frankly. It's fun. I enjoy it. To me, it's almost like a game. Like how can I get these little holes filled on my calendar and work on my average nightly rate? And again, it doesn't all boil down to pricing. It mostly has to do with whether you got a nice property or not. But yeah, the Price Labs is the most popular one, and it does a lot of the heavy lifting. Let me put it this way. If you don't drive that car, it will crash and burn, but it's a very nice looking race car.
What other software or apps would you recommend in the short-term rental space?
I use Turno. It used to be called Turnover B&B. It does two things. It's a calendar app for scheduling your cleaners. And really all you do is drop your iCal from your management software, or it can even integrate with your management software. And your cleaner will know exactly when your house needs to be cleaned at all times. You don't even have to think about it. And it also has a marketplace. Turno has a separate function where you can go on there and use their marketplace to find cleaners. So it's all-encompassing cleaner app and website. There's another one for cleaners called Breezeway. It's also for handy people. I don't personally use it, but it's worth mentioning. It's basically a task app for upcoming cleans and maintenance items. It's almost a Monday.com for your cleaner, that kind of thing. What else? Again, my stack is fairly simple. Brian, I don't like a lot of craziness going on. I just want to me, I got to get my property in service, get it rocking, get it an awesome place for these folks to have a great vacation, and then I'll move on to the next one. I'm always more concerned with what's next.
So, Luke, I have to ask, you're wearing an Iron Maiden shirt, and when Avery was on, I think she had a Guns N' Roses shirt. What's the connection to rock and roll and heavy metal?
We're just big fans, huge fans, and it was kismet when we met. We met at a rock concert, and I played music my whole life. I went to college for music, and since I was 8 years old, I got my first drum set when I was 8 years old. Never made a career out of it, but it's always been a huge part of our lives for sure. And we live our lives on that rock and roll, don't take any crap kind of a lifestyle, although we're very conservative parents at this point in our lives. But yeah, we're just huge fans.
How can our listeners find out more about you or get a hold of you?
I have a podcast, Short-Term Rental Management, believe it or not, which is all about managing vacation rentals, hence the title. I'd love to have you check that out. It comes out every Tuesday, Short-Term Rental Management. And of course, I handle the education at the Short-Term Shop, which is Avery, the big real estate team. They buy and sell agents, real estate agent brokerage, brokered by EXP. I think I should mention that since I said brokerage. But the shorttermshop.com.
Thanks so much for coming on the show, talking about short-term rental management strategies, sharing the 3 P's, which would be photos, pricing, and platform, and then also talking us through some of the apps and software that you use as well. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. I'm very grateful.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's HIG investor.com.